Greetings, my dear friends and loyal readers. Captain Arthur Hastings here, as always, at the esteemed side of my incomparable friend, Hercule Poirot. Today, I invite you to join us on another enthralling journey into the shadowy depths of crime and mystery, where the gas lamps of London cast long, deceptive shadows, and the human heart reveals its most intricate secrets. It is a tale that begins on a quiet, unassuming thoroughfare, a lane that, on a particular evening, became the stage for a most perplexing tragedy. Poirot, with his impeccable intellect and his celebrated little grey cells, will once again navigate a labyrinth of clues, deceptions, and hidden motives. Prepare yourselves for a narrative of suspense, deduction, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Do subscribe to the channel, if you please, and allow us to transport you to a London where every cobblestone whispers a secret. Now, let's begin with the first chapter of Death on Lantern Lane. Chapter 1. The Stillness on Lantern Lane. The fog, that quintessential London character, had rolled in with its usual dramatic flair, cloaking Lantern Lane in a thick, ethereal embrace. Gas lamps, usually defiant beacons against the encroaching night, now merely offered faint, haloed glows, their light diffused into milky pools. It was a street known for its quiet respectability, a row of elegant, if slightly aging, townhouses in Bloomsbury, where the clatter of the city felt a world away. Yet on this particular evening, an uncharacteristic tension hung in the air, a stillness more profound than the fog itself. A most regrettable business, Monsieur Poirot. Inspector Japp's voice was a gravelly rumble, barely audible through the muffled atmosphere as he led us up the steps of number 17. Mr. Alaric Blackwood. Found by his housekeeper not an hour ago. No signs of struggle, but, well, you'll see. Poirot, ever immaculate, even amidst the swirling dampness, adjusted his scarf, his eyes already assessing the shadowed facade of the house. Ah, le pauvre Monsieur Blackwood. A collector, if memory serves, of ancient curiosities. Precisely. Reclusive sort. Lives alone save for his old housekeeper, Mrs. Hopkins, Japp affirmed, pushing open the heavy oak door. Inside, the air was warmer but no less heavy, imbued with the scent of old wood, beeswax, and something faintly metallic. Mrs. Hopkins, a small bird-like woman with a face etched by worry, wrung her hands in the hallway. He was in his study, gentlemen, just as I left him this afternoon before I went to fetch the groceries, but he wasn't moving. Her voice was a fragile whisper. Poirot offered her a reassuring nod, his expression one of calm compassion. "Do not distress yourself, madame. We are here to bring clarity." The study was a testament to Mr. Blackwood's passion. Walls lined with towering bookshelves groaned under the weight of leather-bound tomes. Cabinets displayed an eclectic array of artifacts, Roman coins, Egyptian scarabs, delicate Greek pottery shards, and a collection of geological samples. In the center of this scholarly sanctuary, slumped in a high-backed armchair before a grand, unlit fireplace, was Mr. Alaric Blackwood. He was a man of perhaps 60 years, with thin grey hair and spectacles perched on the bridge of his nose. He had collapsed under mysterious circumstances, his face pale and serene, utterly lifeless. There were no visible injuries, no overturned furniture, no signs of a struggle whatsoever. A single, intricately carved pipe lay beside his hand on a small side table, as if it had simply slipped from his grasp. "The doctor has been and gone," Japp stated, indicating the scene with a sweep of his hand. "Cause of death undetermined as yet. Appears natural, perhaps, but the circumstances... and something else. See that?" He pointed to the empty space on Blackwood's left hand. "Usually wore a rather valuable intaglio ring, so Mrs. Hopkins tells me. A Roman piece, apparently. Not there now." Poirot's eyes, bright and quick, scanned the room. He did not touch anything immediately, but took in every detail with an almost unsettling intensity. He paused at the fireplace, observing a scatter of ash and a few charred fragments of paper. "Ah, Hastings, observe this, if you please," he murmured, without looking at me. "Even in tragedy there is an order. Nothing is truly disturbed. Yet the ring is gone, and here, in the grate." He gently nudged a fragment of the burnt paper with a gloved finger. It was too small to make out much, but a peculiar symbol, half obscured, caught my eye, a stylized eye within a triangle. Poirot then bent low, examining the large Persian rug that covered the floor. "And here, my friend, a small imprint. Distinctive, n'est-ce pas? A boot, perhaps. But look at the sole pattern. And the mud. Not the common London grime. This is a particular sort, perhaps from a specific type of soil." He straightened, his expression thoughtful. "It seems Monsieur Blackwood, despite his reclusive nature, had a visitor who took something, left something, and departed without a sound, leaving the entire house in a state of meticulous, yet deadly, stillness." The silence that followed was broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the soft crackle of the unlit fire. Poirot's little grey cells were already, I knew, working at a furious pace. The mystery of Alaric Blackwood's passing had truly begun. Chapter 2. The Whispers of Borough Market. The next morning, London had shaken off its shroud of fog, revealing a crisp autumnal day. Poirot, with his customary decisiveness, declared our immediate destination to be Borough Market. It is where life, in all its boisterous variety, can often reveal the unexpected, Hastings, he announced, as we jostled through the vibrant throng. The market was a sensory explosion, the rich scent of spices mingled with fresh bread, the vibrant colors of fruit and vegetables piled high, and the cacophony of vendors hawking their wares. Our purpose, however, was not culinary. Poirot had a particular individual in mind. Mr. Alaric Blackwood, though reclusive, was not without family. A niece, Miss Eleanor Vance, an artist who often sells her sketches amidst this charming chaos. We soon located Miss Vance's stall, tucked between a cheesemonger and a florist. She was a young woman of perhaps 25, with keen, intelligent eyes and hands smudged with charcoal. Her drawings, mostly vivid street scenes and portraits, possessed a striking energy. She looked up, startled, as Poirot introduced himself and explained our visit. "My uncle." "Oh dear, I hadn't heard," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, though a flicker of dismay crossed her features. "He was always so private. We didn't see much of each other, not since I pursued art instead of, well, a more sensible profession." There was a hint of bitterness in her tone. Poirot's gaze was gentle but probing. "Mademoiselle Vance, did your uncle ever speak of any recent disputes, any valuable acquisitions that might have caused him trouble?" Eleanor hesitated, sketching idly on a scrap of paper. "He did mention something, yes, a few weeks ago, a rare intaglio ring, he called it. The Eye of Elysium, he said, whatever that meant. He was incredibly excited about acquiring it, but then he seemed worried, said there was some professional disagreement over its authenticity or its provenance. Someone else wanted it desperately, I gathered." "Did he mention a name?" I asked, leaning closer. She shook her head. "No, just that this rival was rather tenacious. He thought the ring might be more trouble than it was worth even after he had it. He was a man of peculiar passions, my uncle." As she spoke, I noticed her unconsciously drawing the very symbol we had seen on the burnt paper fragment in Alaric's fireplace, an eye within a triangle. Poirot's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Ah, mademoiselle, a fascinating design. You are familiar with such ancient iconography." Eleanor gave a small, self-deprecating smile. "A bit. Uncle Alaric used to bore me with his historical lectures. He was obsessed with obscure Roman cults and their symbols. This one, in particular, was part of a riddle he was trying to decipher, a sort of intellectual game he played with himself. He'd even shown me some of the cipher letters, years ago, part of an old family legend, he used to say. Just then, a gruff voice called out from a nearby vegetable stall. "Hey, you detectives, looking for Summit? Saw you on the telly or in the papers, whatever it is you do." It was Mr. Silas Croft, a burly fruit and vegetable vendor, his hands perpetually stained with earth. Poirot, ever opportunistic, approached him. "Monsieur Croft, perhaps you can assist us. Were you in the vicinity of Lantern Lane yesterday evening?" Croft scratched his chin. "As a matter of fact, I was. Delivering a late order of special plums for Mrs. Finch. Or was it Mrs. Gable? Can't recall. Around 9 it was. Saw a figure, tall and stooping, skulking near Mr. Blackwood's house. Didn't think anything of it at the time. Folk are always about. Too dark to see a face, mind, and the fog was coming in thick." "A tall, stooping figure," Poirot repeated thoughtfully, his gaze returning to Eleanor, who had resumed her sketching, though her strokes seemed more agitated now. He then glanced at the small discarded drawing of the eye and triangle symbol. "Thank you, Monsieur Croft. You have been most helpful." As we walked away, Poirot turned to me, his expression grave. "Hastings, we have a missing ring, a possible rival, and now a shadowy figure. But the most intriguing detail, perhaps, is Mademoiselle Vance's familiarity with that particular symbol and her uncle's intellectual game. Coincidence, or a key to the cipher he was attempting to solve, a cipher that perhaps led to his undoing. The bustling market, with its thousand smells and sounds, suddenly seemed to hold a silent, ominous secret." Chapter 3. The Echoes in the Reading Room. Poirot, ever convinced that the past held the key to the present, directed our next investigation to the venerable halls of the British Museum Reading Room. The immense dome overhead, the hushed rustle of turning pages, and the profound scent of old paper created an atmosphere of concentrated scholarship. Here, amidst the quiet reverence for knowledge, Poirot hoped to illuminate the cryptic fragment of paper found in Alaric Blackwood's fireplace. "This symbol, Hastings," Poirot murmured, indicating the rough sketch Eleanor Vance had made. "An eye within a triangle. It has a definite historical resonance." Monsieur Blackwood was deeply invested in obscure historical details. If he was engaged in an intellectual game involving such a cipher, it would surely have its roots in classical antiquity. He had arranged an appointment with Dr. Evelyn Reed, a formidable philologist renowned for her expertise in ancient languages and symbolism. She was a woman of sharp intellect and an even sharper tongue, with spectacles perched on her nose and a formidable bun of grey hair. She greeted us with a curt nod, her gaze immediately dissecting Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot," she stated, rather than asked, her voice clear and precise. "Inspector Japp has apprised me of your query. You believe Mr. Blackwood's unfortunate demise may be connected to his scholarly pursuits." "Madame, his study was a shrine to his passions. The answer, I feel, lies within the echoes of his research," Poirot replied, presenting her with the charred fragment and Eleanor's sketch. "We found this, partially incinerated, in his fireplace. The symbol, the context of a riddle or cipher he was attempting to solve, and the mention of an object called the Eye of Elysium. Do these resonate with your extensive knowledge?" Dr. Reed took the items, examining them with an almost clinical detachment. She held the charred paper up to the light, her brow furrowing. Yes, I recognize this, or rather, the remnants of it. Blackwood had corresponded with me a few months ago about precisely this. He was obsessed, utterly obsessed, with a particular Roman cult, the Acolytes of Elysium, a rather obscure sect, rumored to possess esoteric knowledge and to have guarded a mythical artifact, the Eye of Elysium, a gem believed to reveal truths beyond mortal comprehension. He was convinced it was not myth but history, and that the symbols and riddles were clues to its whereabouts. "And the symbol, the eye in the triangle," I ventured, "a prominent emblem of the acolytes, represents divine insight, knowledge, often with a hint of secrecy," she explained, tapping the paper. He believed this fragment, and indeed an entire series of riddles he was painstakingly piecing together, would lead him to the eye. He was, shall we say, rather fervent. "Did he ever mention acquiring the intaglio ring that Miss Vance spoke of?" Poirot inquired. "The one he called the Eye of Elysium." Dr. Reed scoffed. "Rubbish. Blackwood would never have confused a mere intaglio, no matter how valuable, with the legendary Eye of Elysium. He believed that artifact to be a much grander, perhaps even ethereal, object. He was a scholar, not a common collector of baubles. He was looking for the eye, not an eye." She paused, adjusting her spectacles. "However, he did mention a dispute. He believed someone else was also on the trail, attempting to acquire artifacts related to the acolytes, perhaps even trying to outwit him in deciphering the riddle. He was quite paranoid about it, convinced this rival was closing in." "Did he ever mention the name of this rival, madame?" Poirot asked softly, his gaze fixed on the philologist. "He alluded to a certain Monsieur Dubois, a French art dealer, highly knowledgeable, but whom Blackwood suspected of less than scrupulous methods. Said Dubois was sniffing around the same obscure texts, the same historical threads. He was very cagey about it all, fearing his research would be poached." She leaned back, her task complete. "If this is about the Eye of Elysium, Monsieur Poirot, you are dealing with a dangerous obsession, not merely a stolen trinket." As we left the silent dignity of the reading room, the afternoon sun streaming through the high windows, Poirot's expression was one of profound concentration. "So, Hastings, a legendary artifact, a secret society, and a rival with a reputation for questionable dealings. The plot thickens, does it not? The Eye of Elysium, a quest that perhaps led Alaric Blackwood to a deadly end, not merely a grand discovery." The weight of ancient knowledge, I realized, could sometimes be far heavier than gold. Chapter 4. The Artist's Atelier and a Curious Scent. Our investigation next led us away from the hallowed halls of academia to the vibrant, yet often secretive, world of art. Poirot's little grey cells had pointed us toward Monsieur Antoine Dubois, the art dealer Dr. Reed had mentioned, a man potentially intertwined with both Alaric Blackwood's academic pursuits and the missing intaglio ring. We found his atelier tucked away in a quiet mews in Chelsea, a surprisingly elegant space filled with a heady mix of turpentine, oil paint, and the faint, sweet aroma of something else, something I couldn't quite place. The late afternoon light, filtered through a large north-facing window, illuminated an array of canvases, both finished and unfinished, and an assortment of antique furniture. Monsieur Dubois himself was a study in cultivated charm, impeccably dressed, with a precisely trimmed beard and an air of worldly sophistication. He greeted us with a polite, if somewhat wary, smile. "Ah, Monsieur Poirot, I had heard of your presence in London, though I confess I had not anticipated such an illustrious visit to my humble studio. Our purpose, Monsieur Dubois, is not one of artistic appreciation, alas," Poirot began, his eyes already sweeping the room, taking in every detail. "It concerns the late Mr. Alaric Blackwood. We understand you had some recent dealings with him." Dubois sighed, a theatrical gesture. "A great tragedy, Mr. Blackwood's passing. A true connoisseur. Yes, we did indeed have discussions. Mr. Blackwood was in possession of a most exquisite Roman intaglio, a piece of remarkable craftsmanship. I was, frankly, eager to acquire it for a particular client." "The Eye of Elysium, perhaps?" Poirot interjected smoothly. Dubois chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "Ah, Blackwood's fanciful name for it." He had a vivid imagination for such things. "A fine piece, undoubtedly, but hardly a legendary relic. I offered him a most generous sum, a truly exceptional price. He seemed amenable. Then, at the very last moment, he changed his mind. Claimed he wished to hold on to it for sentimental reasons, if you can believe it. A frustrating business, but Blackwood was known for his eccentricities. When precisely did this change of heart occur, monsieur? I asked. 2 days before his unfortunate demise, Dubois replied, a hint of irritation in his voice. I was to visit him that very evening to finalize the transaction, but he sent a rather curt note cancelling our meeting. Most unusual for him, as he was usually so meticulous. Poirot, meanwhile, had taken a step closer to a small, cluttered table where brushes lay soaking in a jar and various pigments were arranged. He sniffed delicately. This scent, monsieur, it is rather unique. Sweet, yet with an almost medicinal quality. Is it a particular blend of paints you use? Dubois smiled, a flash of white teeth. Ah, Monsieur Poirot, your senses are as keen as your intellect. It is a special varnish indeed. My own blend for preserving delicate pigments contains a touch of rare jasmine and a unique resin imported from the East, extremely difficult to source. As he spoke, I caught sight of a large, unfinished portrait on an easel, a striking, almost haunting depiction of Miss Eleanor Vance. She was seated in a velvet-draped chair, her hand resting on a small, unidentifiable object. Ah, Mademoiselle Vance, Poirot observed, indicating the painting. I was not aware she sat for you. Dubois waved a hand dismissively. A small commission, a mutual friend. She has talent, but perhaps not the discipline required for true mastery. She was here, in fact, earlier this evening, discussing a particular shade of ochre, a talented but somewhat mercurial temperament. And on the evening of Mr. Blackwood's death, monsieur, where were you? Poirot asked, his tone suddenly sharper. Dubois raised an eyebrow. At a private viewing, monsieur, at the Harrington Gallery, a most public and well-attended affair. Many witnesses can attest to my presence there until quite late. My alibi, I assure you, is unassailable. As we left the atelier, the curious scent of Dubois' varnish seemed to cling to us. Poirot's expression was unreadable. A most charming man, our Monsieur Dubois, n'est-ce pas, Hastings? And an alibi as solid as granite. Yet there is a nuance, a flicker of something in his tale that does not quite accord with the meticulous truth. And that scent, it is familiar, is it not? I racked my brain, but I couldn't quite place it. The mystery, like the aroma, was becoming ever more complex and subtle. Chapter 5. Shadow Play by the Thames. The pervasive chill of a London night, exacerbated by a creeping fog and the dampness from the river, seemed to cling to us as we ventured into the labyrinthine alleys of Wapping Docks. The gas lamps here were fewer and farther between, casting pools of weak yellow light onto wet cobblestones, making long, dancing shadows of everything. The air was thick with the smells of stagnant water, coal smoke, and something indefinable. The scent of illicit dealings, perhaps. Poirot, guided by a whispered rumour gleaned by Japp, was seeking a man known only as Mr. Gareth Thorne, a shadowy figure rumoured to dabble in antiquities that rarely pass through reputable channels. Our Monsieur Dubois spoke of a particular client for the intaglio, Hastings, Poirot explained, picking his way carefully around a puddle. And Dr. Reed mentioned Blackwood's paranoia about a rival. It is possible that the Eye of Elysium was not merely a scholarly obsession, but an object of very real and perhaps dangerous value. We found Thorne in a dimly lit office within a derelict warehouse, the only sign of life a single smoking lantern. He was a gaunt man, with shrewd, suspicious eyes and a nervous tic that caused him to constantly rub his thumb against his forefinger. He eyed us with an unmistakable air of unease as Poirot introduced himself. "Detectives, what business have you here?" Thorne's voice was raspy, laced with caution. "I'm a simple purveyor of curios." Nothing illegal, mind you. Our interest, Monsieur Thorne, concerns Mr. Alaric Blackwood, Poirot stated, his voice calm, cutting through Thorne's defensiveness. We believe you may have had some contact with him regarding an artifact, a Roman intaglio, perhaps. Thorne flinched, his eyes darting to a dusty shelf filled with obscure objects. Blackwood. Yes, he came here once. About a month ago, not for the intaglio, though. He was looking for verification, had acquired a strange piece, claimed it was part of the Eye of Elysium legend. Wanted to know if it was genuine or a clever forgery. He paused, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow despite the cold. I told him it was beyond my expertise. Looked like a common rock to me, but he was convinced it was special. Some kind of glowing mineral, he said. From an old crypt. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A glowing mineral, monsieur. From a crypt? Aye. Said it was found near an old, disused crypt off the usual paths. Said it had a strange, phosphorescent moss growing on it, unique to that spot. Wanted to know if its composition matched anything known to ancient Rome. Obsessed he was. Poirot bent down, examining the floor near Thorne's worn boots. And the mud, monsieur. A particular type, perhaps. From such a location. Thorne looked surprised. Could be. That crypt Blackwood spoke of, it's in a forgotten corner of an old burial ground, not far from here. The ground there is quite distinct, marshy, with that strange, pale moss he mentioned. I've seen it myself when I've occasionally sourced items from old, neglected places. He trailed off, his gaze becoming shifty. But I didn't kill Blackwood. I had no quarrel with him. He left here disappointed, that's all. And the intaglio, Monsieur Dubois' prize? Poirot pressed. You know nothing of its whereabouts. Thorne hesitated. I heard whispers, yes, that Dubois was desperate for it. And Blackwood. He was playing a dangerous game. Some say he had 2 intaglios. One real, one a remarkable forgery. He was going to switch them, pass off the fake. But that's just dockside gossip, mind you. No proof. As we left the grimy warehouse and walked back into the pervasive dampness of the docks, the revelation of a phosphorescent moss from a specific crypt and the rumor of a forgery weighed heavily. The mud print on Blackwood's rug, I now recalled, had been unusual. Could this be the same mud and the intaglio? Was it merely stolen or replaced? Poirot, I ventured. The glowing mineral, the moss, the crypt, and the forgery. Are we dealing with a double cross? Poirot, his silhouette a stark figure against the hazy light of the distant city, merely nodded, his brow furrowed in deep thought. Indeed, Hastings, we are dealing with layers of deception built upon a foundation of obsession. The true Eye of Elysium might not be an object, but a secret. And someone was willing to kill to keep that secret buried. The chill of the night, previously physical, now felt profoundly psychological, a premonition of darker truths to come. Chapter 6. A cryptic invitation and a garden of secrets. The following afternoon found us in a starkly different setting, one of refined elegance and subtle decay, a grand walled garden of an aristocratic estate in Kensington. Lady Fenella Caldwell, a formidable figure in London society and a renowned patroness of the arts and antiquities, had extended a rather pointed invitation for tea. The garden, though meticulously maintained, held a wild beauty, with ancient rose bushes blooming exuberantly amidst meticulously trimmed hedges, and a faint, sweet fragrance lingering in the air. Sunlight, finally breaking through the stubborn London clouds, dappled through the leaves, creating shifting patterns on the gravel path. Lady Caldwell, a woman in her late 70s with piercing blue eyes and a shock of silver hair, greeted us with a knowing smile. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, to what do I owe the unexpected pleasure? I presume your visit is not merely a social call, delightful as that might be. Her voice, though soft, carried an undeniable authority. Poirot bowed elegantly, Lady Caldwell, your reputation for discernment and your vast knowledge of antiquities are well known. We seek your insight regarding the late Mr. Alaric Blackwood." "Ah, poor Alaric," she mused, leading us to a wrought-iron bench beneath a particularly ancient wisteria vine. A brilliant mind, though perhaps too absorbed in his dusty tomes. We often crossed paths, particularly over certain rare acquisitions. He was, to put it mildly, rather competitive. "We understand he recently acquired a Roman intaglio known as the Eye of Elysium," I began. Lady Caldwell snorted delicately. "That fanciful name. Blackwood was such a romantic. Yes, I was interested in that piece myself. A rather exquisite find, though its provenance was, shall we say, a touch hazy. I believe Monsieur Dubois was also rather eager to acquire it." She paused, pouring tea with a steady hand. "Alaric, for all his reclusiveness, was not without his secrets, you know. He had a rather colourful past before he became the hermit of Lantern Lane. An unfortunate entanglement, I recall, with a rather unscrupulous individual, which led to a considerable family scandal some years ago. It involved a forged will, if memory serves, and a significant inheritance." Poirot's eyes, fixed on a particularly vibrant, deep crimson flower growing near the bench, sharpened. "A forged will, madame? A hidden inheritance?" "Indeed. All hushed up, of course. But Alaric, in his later years, grew rather fond of reminiscing about old wrongs. He once confided in me that he feared someone was unearthing old bones, as he put it. Perhaps a past that threatened to spill out into the present." She took a sip of tea, her gaze sweeping over her immaculate garden. "Such a shame. He was on the verge of exposing something, I believe, something that would have caused a great deal of discomfort for certain individuals." "Did he ever mention who these individuals might be?" I asked, intrigued. "He was vague, deliberately so, but he did mention a connection to his estranged niece, Eleanor. Something about her family's legacy being intertwined with this old scandal. He felt a sense of duty, I gathered, to finally right an old wrong, even if it meant disgracing his own family." Poirot, having seemingly absorbed every detail of Lady Caldwell's narrative, then pointed to the vibrant flower. "This bloom, madame. It is most striking. A unique species." Lady Caldwell smiled, a rare genuine warmth in her eyes. "Ah, my blood lily. A hybrid I cultivated myself years ago. Its pollen is quite distinctive, a deep crimson. You won't find it anywhere else in London, I assure you." As we took our leave, the lingering scent of the blood lily and Lady Caldwell's intriguing revelations hung in the air. The notion of a forged will and a family scandal, connecting directly to Eleanor Vance and her family's legacy, added an entirely new dimension to the case. And the blood lily's pollen, Poirot, I knew, had a way of finding significance in the most unassuming details. The gentle afternoon in the serene garden had unveiled a darker, more complex tapestry of motives, weaving together greed, a hidden past, and a desperate need for concealment. Chapter 7. The Revelation at Whitehaven Mansions. The morning mist had given way to a bright, almost unnaturally clear day as the assembled parties gathered in Poirot's meticulously ordered drawing-room at Whitehaven Mansions. The tension in the air was almost palpable, a stark contrast to the comfortable elegance of the surroundings. Poirot, seated precisely in his favourite armchair, surveyed the faces before him. Inspector Japp, observant and expectant. Miss Eleanor Vance, pale but composed. Monsieur Antoine Dubois, smooth and urbane. Mr. Gareth Thorne, fidgety and anxious. And Dr. Evelyn Reed, stern and watchful. Hastings, as always, sat ready with his notebook. "My friends," Poirot began, his voice calm, resonating with quiet authority, "we are here to bring the truth to light regarding the unfortunate passing of Mr. Alaric Blackwood. It was not a simple robbery, nor a scholarly accident. It was I regret to say, murder, born of a desperate secret. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. The initial clues were perplexing. A missing intaglio ring, a partially burnt cryptic letter, a peculiar mud print, the mention of an eye of Elysium, each on its own a fragment. But the little grey cells, they demand order, connection. Let us speak of the intaglio first. Monsieur Dubois believed it was stolen. Mr. Thorne heard whispers of a forgery. Blackwood, obsessed with the legendary eye of Elysium, indeed believed he possessed it. But the intaglio found missing from his hand was not the true ancient artifact. It was a remarkably clever forgery, intended to replace the genuine item that Blackwood had already acquired, a piece he had gone to Mr. Thorne to verify, a piece he planned to expose as a fraud. The real intaglio, the genuine Roman piece, was the one Mr. Dubois was so desperate to acquire, but it was not the fabled eye of Elysium. That was a deception. Poirot's gaze settled on Eleanor Vance. Mademoiselle Vance, your uncle spoke of an old family scandal, a forged will, and a lost inheritance that threatened to resurface. He was preparing to expose it, a secret that would have ruined the reputation of the individual who benefited from that deception, your family. You, mademoiselle, possessed an intimate knowledge of your uncle's obscure research into Roman cults and ciphers. Details you admitted were part of an intellectual game and old family legends. Eleanor stiffened, her eyes wide. What are you implying, monsieur? I am implying that the cryptic letter was a red herring planted by the killer, a genuine fragment of your uncle's research into the acolytes of Elysium, which you used to create an elaborate false trail. You knew his habits, his obsessions. The unique symbol, the eye within the triangle, was something you had seen before, even drawn instinctively. The eye of Elysium was your diversion, a smokescreen. Poirot then turned his attention to the mud print. The distinct mud print on the rug, Hastings will recall, was unique. Mr. Thorne identified it as being from a specific, neglected burial ground, known for its phosphorescent moss. Mademoiselle Vance, you are an artist. Artists often seek inspiration in unusual places. You have an old, abandoned art project near just such a crypt, did you not? A source of unique colors and textures for your canvases. And you often went there, particularly in the evenings, to work undisturbed. On the night of Mr. Blackwood's death, you were seen near Lantern Lane, a tall, stooping figure. Perhaps not an unfamiliar posture for an artist carrying equipment, or even to disguise oneself. Eleanor's composure began to crack. I was sketching. My alibi holds. Your alibi was thin, mademoiselle. You merely said you were in your studio. You were, but you left. The specific scent of Monsieur Dubois' varnish, I noticed it in his studio. I noted its unique quality, but its presence at the crime scene was a cunning misdirection. It was on the forged intaglio you carried, a piece you likely made and varnished yourself, intending to replace the genuine one. The blood lily pollen from Lady Caldwell's garden, another clue, was brushed off from your clothing, for you had visited her recently, seeking a favor or advice. And the actual intaglio, the genuine one Mr. Dubois wanted, the one Alaric had obtained and which he intended to use to expose the truth about the forged will and the stolen inheritance. You replaced it with your forgery to continue the deception and hid the genuine piece. It was found, carefully concealed beneath a loose floorboard in your own studio, amidst your art supplies, its true value now compromised by your intent. Mr. Alaric Blackwood discovered your forgery, mademoiselle. He discovered your role in the old scandal and intended to expose you and the truth about the stolen inheritance, which would have ruined your artistic career and your very name. You went to his house not to steal the ring, but to silence him, to prevent him from revealing the truth. You silenced him with a swift, subtle poison, a detail the doctor will soon confirm, a poison you could easily acquire for your art. perhaps to prepare canvases or as a pigment, and then you used his own research to create a baffling, but ultimately flawed, smokescreen. Eleanor Vance stood up, her face a mask of furious despair, the artistic temperament now contorted into something ugly. He would have ruined everything I've worked for. Jap, without a word, stepped forward and placed his hand firmly on her arm. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the sharp click of Poirot closing his snuff-box. "The little grey cells, Hastings." Poirot sighed, turning to me, a hint of melancholy in his eyes. "They always reveal the truth, however ugly it may be. The stillness on Lantern Lane, it was not merely death, but a desperate act to bury a past that refused to remain silent. Thank you for joining us on this intricate journey of detection and revelation. Subscribe for more stories."